Hello, friends. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. I teach in the introductory program at the doctoral program at the University of San Diego. Paige is one of our Sterling students, as there are a number of others in the room, and I want to acknowledge them and thank them for being here today. What I'm going to take you through is a personal journey, my own little way of making sense out of what the general theory of leadership was and what it meant to me as a person like many of you who came into the study of leadership from a different field. My home field is public administration and public policy analysis, although I've always had a soft spot in my heart for leadership and a great love for the phenomenon and the study of the phenomenon. So here I am, I roll in and I hear that Georgia has been involved in the production of a book, so I buy it. Not an inexpensive investment either, Georgia.
We try.
Right there with me. Thank you. I got an amen from the pulpit there. So I read the book. We immediately had to incorporate it because I recognized that it was in fact an important book. And I had a sense that it was a very important project as I read it, and perhaps it could be that it might have been a turning point in the field of leadership studies. And I may have felt that way because it was reminiscent of another project. How many public administration home fielders are there out there? Any? We're a small minority in this group, apparently. But I was reminded of the Minnowbrook, the famous Minnowbrook conference that took place. And those of you that are familiar will recall that another founder of the field, Dwight Waldo, called together a group of scholars, young scholars. The rule was they had to be under 35 years of age in order to participate. In 1968, at a conference site in Minnowbrook, which is owned by the by Syracuse University, and they met there to talk about the field of public administration, not unlike your project. And that heralded a whole new perspective, a whole new approach to the examination of public administration. It was called the New Public Administration. It was a more normative and responsive approach to public service. And could I wonder, this be, as we look back in the annals of what this field will eventually become, could this have the same heritage? So this is how I made sense of the project. I'm a doodler, I admit it. I draw pictures and I try to link concepts. So this is where I begin. We start with Aristotle's golden mean. All right, on one end we have a spectrum here that goes from a very divergent and relatively incoherent, low agreement situation to, at the other end of the spectrum, a very strong convergence, high agreement, convergent perspective. Now, I'm not sure where you would put leadership studies on that spectrum. I suppose each of us may have a different idea, but we would all probably agree that it's a little further to the left than it is to the right. And I think there's not going to be a lot of disagreement about that, and that's okay. So that's step number one. Step number two, in my mind, is we got to think about the context. Now, in an academia, we're a fractious group. We're antagonistic by nature, and that's a beautiful thing. And there are all sorts of norms and cultural artifacts that tell us that it is an uphill battle to move any field to the right on the spectrum. And I'm sure you experienced that through your deliberations. However, many of the consumers of our thought processes and our publications are otherwise. And the spectrum is in fact tilted for them. I mean, how else can you explain that 700 of the Fortune 1000 have a singular view of what leadership is, and that's situational leadership, purveyed by one of two commercial outlets, Ken Blanchard Companies or the Center for Leadership Studies? How else can you explain that? And from my experience as a 27-year military officer, I'm familiar with military doctrine. Military doctrine is sloped to the right. We like to get an answer, and once we get the answer, we don't want to let go of that answer for something that might in fact be better. Can I get another amen from the back? Okay. So I came upon Kolb. I was working with a good friend of mine, Chris Paparone, who is a true postmodernist, and we were looking at how professions evaluate knowledge and how they consume knowledge and incorporate it and disseminate it. We found Kolb very helpful, so we took some license with his 4 stages of experiential learning, and I put it over the spectrum. So we have divergent at one end, and then all fields and professions specifically. We're not a profession, we're a field, but we start to gain shared experiences. We begin to agree on certain things, and so we begin to converge. And of course, at the right end of the spectrum, then this becomes institutionalized technology that is transmitted very efficiently, but it becomes very difficult to change. Now again, where are we on that spectrum? Further to the left, then then to the right, and I'll tell you where my cut is on that here in just a second. Also ran across another economic theory called path dependency. Any experts in path dependence out there? Good. I hate it when there are ringers in the room. Path dependency, out of a myriad of possibilities to the left in the pre-formation phase, some decisions are made. In our field, certain concepts become privileged. Certain textbooks are written. We have some level of agreement. And the key of path dependency is that history matters. That previous decisions have some limiting factor on future decisions. Okay? So at the far right end of the spectrum with path dependence in an academic setting, that would look like paradigmatic lock-in, right? Which is not very likely, I admit. But it is the logical extension of the spectrum, so we can't totally disregard the possibility. And that, I argue, would be a bad thing for us. So let's put it all together. And I'm almost done with my doodling, and I'll move to my conclusion. That is, where are we at? Where that yellow bar is my best guess as to where we are at. We are not in the divergent phase where there is no coherence to the field. We do have privileged text. We do have transforming leadership. We do have transactional leadership. We have the work of Reggio. We have the work of Goethals. We have the work of Sorensen. These are established and they are shared. We can, in fact, communicate with each other about this phenomenon, although there may be aspects of it about which we will disagree. We are far from lock-in, and we should work to stay far from lock-in. All right. Now, in closing, well, let me say also about my postmodernist friend very quickly. My friend Chris Paparone. I'm not really a postmodernist, but like General Galvin was a paratrooper. I'm an old paratrooper, so I like to quote old paratroopers. He was a famous paratrooper. He's the youngest general in World War II, jumped out of every combat operation we ever had. And somebody once asked him, General Gavin, do you like jumping out of airplanes? And he stopped and hung his head and he said, the truth is I really do not like to jump out of airplanes, but I really enjoy the company of those who do. I am not a postmodernist, but I really enjoy the company of those who are. Obnoxious as though they may be sometimes. My friend Chris Pepper, so I recently ran across this quote as one of our required readings for a doctoral program. I figured if the students have to read it, I should too. And it said, the very aims of developing general theories or universalizable moral claims are dismissed as anachronistic and frequently totalitarian, like styles of epic architecture. Hence, one frequently encounters terms in postmodern writing such as fracturing, breaking, and of course, deconstruction. This outlook embraces incommensurability across worldviews, not as an unfortunate failure to establish a common meaning and value, but as a desired state. Accordingly, we would encourage multiplying as many voices and perspectives as possible, without seeking to reconcile or combine them into a single, consistent, unified account. And that was Bublis and Rice in a 1991 article in Harvard Educational Review. So, in conclusion, the General Theory of Leadership project was important, not because it launched a general theory, but because it captured convergent knowledge for the field. It moved the field to greater coherence, and I think it served as a valuable record of the current voices and perspectives in our field. It was a worthy and it was a noble effort. And as for the general theory, I won't miss it.